Welcome to the Behind the Wind podcast. I'm Lauren Lane. For over 50 years now, the LSI team has dedicated themselves to the science of business development. We've seen the impact of our work and how it's evolved into economic development and now social impact work. This week, Sean and I have the opportunity to meet with Mr. Frank Bateman, the current executive director of the Arkansas Black Mayors Association. This association works with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to help support mayors in improving the quality of life for its residents in smaller communities. Sean and Frank are going to discuss the mission and values of the Arkansas Black Mayors Association and how the current infrastructure bills are impacting their communities. Let's jump in.
Thanks for being with us this morning. Frank, could you just give some background on your history and your career and how you became the executive director of the Black Mayors Association?
Yes, Sean. I worked for a state commission, Martin Luther King Commission, out of college. And then I went in 2007, I started a position with Senator Mark Pryor, the field representative for the U.S. Senate, Mark Pryor, from 2007 to 2014. And at that time, I established a lot of relationships with a lot of the mayors and found out that they had an association that it dated back to 1972. So, I had 25 counties for the senator, not just black mayors, but all mayors. But I had 25 counties to the north and south of Arkansas. And so I just established relationships. They had a little association, so I would work with them, work with whatever group of county groups, county judges and all that kind of stuff. But this group they just kind of needed a lot more of assistance and technical assistance. So, our office was able to apply that. So after 2014, we lost the election. And so I was still, passionate about helping these guys. So just started working with them on a volunteer basis. 2015, took another position just so I could keep working with them and the people that allowed me to keep working with them. Plus, a lot of them have their own water and sewer plants. So that was my job with Communities Unlimited. I was an environmental specialist with them for 4 years.
Wow.
And during that time, I was still helping the black mayors in the evenings, on the weekends, and when took leave time to keep them going. And so in we went through COVID and everything, and then in 2022, we were able to get a good sized grant, and then one of the foundations from around here, the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation, kind of came in and provided a base. To provide some funding so we could, get salaries and keep on helping. And so I left Communities Unlimited and became the executive director in June of 2022.
So it really came about through your relationship working with Senator Pryor. Is that
right?
Correct? How did you get connected with Senator Pryor?
Well, Senator Pryor, I was the kind that really never wanted to get into politics and all that kind of stuff. My mom she was around politics and stuff, and I actually worked for a state senator. So I didn't, when I was at the King Commission, but I still just kind of stayed away from politics. But
you're in it now.
Yeah. So I got into it that way. But so I was working, the King Commission, the state senator left the King Commission and started his own deal. And so I was still with the King Commission, and I figured that, they had a board and they were going to attach me to the state senator. So I figured I didn't have enough of the board members to stay on the King Commission. So I had heard about this position. It came up, and so I just heard about it in the relationship and went over and visit with the state director at that time, and had a good interview. They knew that I had been out in the communities. Even when I was with the King Commission, I was running up and down the highways, visiting and having a lot of relationships all over the state. So that's kind of how I ran into actually getting into the political ring.
That's fantastic. Could you talk talk about the Black Mayors Association and its history and its vision. I mean, one of the things that, I'm so impressed with what this organization has accomplished over the last 50 years. You celebrated your 50-year anniversary last year. So did LSI. LSI celebrated its 50-year anniversary. But I mean, talk about the history and the vision of the organization, which is it's remarkable.
Yes, a whole lot of the history, and we still know all the history. But I had one of my past pastors call me and was talking about the history of it, and so he actually did the research, found some news articles where they were addressing some issues back in 1972. And so we looked at that article. Then that way we realized, hey, this organization is getting ready to be 50 years old, and so we still been doing some research on some of that history. But they had agreed at that time to form a group to come together, talk about growth, talk about development in their communities, some of the issues that they were having back then, which we're still having. We're back to having the same infrastructure issues now. And theirs was at that time with water and sewer, which we still have those issues, and especially in these smaller towns. And seems like 50 years later, we're still having some of those same issues. So that's the article actually talks about that. And actually, that was one of the main areas they were talking about was water and sewer. But, there's other infrastructure problems. A lot of them don't have tax base. The schools have gone out of their communities. There's not been any economic development in some of those communities. So what is happening now is 50 years later, we're still dealing with some of the same things. One of the things that I did when I was with Senator Pryor was trying to introduce them to the resources. A lot of the mayors, some of them are part-time mayors, but they didn't know where to go to get the resources. When I came in and was talking to them about money, they think that everything was coming from the state. But so some of the federal resources with USDA and some of those are federal money. So they didn't know the money from the federal state. They didn't have a relationship with the senator. They didn't have a relationship even with their state representative. They didn't have a relationship with congressman. So that was one of my goals, is to make sure that they at least know who they are. One of the things I even do with the new mayors coming on, I said, you need to know, and they need to know you. I said, write them, call them.
Yes.
I said, if you're a mayor of a town, they're gonna call you back.
Yeah, right.
Excuse me. I told them, and then we've even had some sessions where, and they used to do this when President Clinton was governor. It was a few of them, and we even got a little footage on them with Governor Jim Guy Tucker. But it might be 50 black mayors, but only 8 or 9 of them will show up because they don't feel like they have. I don't know why they don't, but that's just part of politics. And I told them, I said, we're in a session now, and we'll do a lobby day down at the session. But I said, you got to go down there. You got to know what's happening, beyond what in municipal league. They'll have that once or twice a year, and they'll bring you information. I said, but you have to go down there. One of the things that we do during the sessions, we take them down, and there's a process you go through by giving a little ticket and have the representative come out, and meet the mayor. Mayor, they've never experienced that. And then the mayor said, yeah, I got a letter from him, but I've never met my state senator, my state representative, my state senator. So I said, you got to be engaged that way. But we have 3 of the goals is develop programs to address educational, economic, health, and social levels of citizens. So we've got a big health disparities grant now from the Arkansas Department of Health by way of the CDC, basically during the COVID time. So we're working with that. That's one of our programs. Enhance the quality of life for the residents of municipalities, for the ones that are members, provide a mechanism of cooperation and exchange of ideas. And that's one of the main things, is to exchange ideas, especially these new ones. The new mayors that have just got elected, I told them, I said, you need to pick up and call the mayor of, say, for Cotton Plant. I said, she'll tell you the story of she was going through some of the same things. the mayor of Blytheville. When I was working with Senator Pryor, he chased us down and had a major tax problem and miraculously overcame it. He's done went into retirement, but you know, he done some things that IRS was saying, oh, it can't be done, but he made it happen, and we were able to assist him to get to the point where they could pay their taxes back. So, we try to encourage them, pick up the phone and call your mayor because they've experienced some of the same things you're going through and you will go through.
Absolutely. Talk about, the transformation of this organization over the last 50 years has just been exponential. In 1972, there were very few Black mayors in Arkansas, and I think today you mentioned 50. Is there? I think it's even more than that, right? I think it's. I think you've got about 60 Black mayors in the state.
We're still working on the census after the last, because we lost a few and then we gained a few.
Okay.
So over the last, we did pick up. So we're probably right at about 60.
That is incredible, from almost none 50 years ago to approximately 60 Black mayors serving in Arkansas. Many of these mayors, and I think this is the real exciting statistic, is many of these mayors are serving as the first Black mayor of their city or county, and that to me is the real, including your capital, right? Is that correct? The first Black mayor of Arkansas, right, serving his first term. So talk about that. Is just incredible.
Yeah, we look at leadership, and in the past we've had different issues with Black leadership here in Central Arkansas, wherever. Even out in the rural areas, you get someone that you split the vote, all that kind of stuff happens. But we have some good leadership. When I was working for Senator Pryor, there was some mayors that what I would probably not call good leaders. But the majority of these mayors now are very passionate about their towns. They believe in their towns. They're focused on, I have a little trouble trying to get them to focus on, the togetherness sometimes, because they're really focused and passionate about their towns and their issues. And I understand that, but at the same time, I tell them if we can ever get everybody together and we come down with the same agenda, or not the same agenda, but at least agree on 2 or 3 things that we can take to the governor, that we can take to the senator. We got to get back to a point. At one time, they even had their own legislative liaison, which we done got away from that, where they had their own package that we could take down there. Now, what Hutchinson, when he was the governor here in Arkansas, at least a couple of times, we met with the congressman, we met with Senator Bozeman. So those are the kind of things we'll reach back out and we'll take a package once we kind of get organized a little bit more. We'll take a package to them, and then we'll reach out and meet with our present governor, Governor Sanders. They're always welcoming. But when you do that, Sean, you got to, we didn't have, we presented and we didn't have any follow-ups. And that's one of the things that has not been around, is to be able to have a person on staff, even if it's a small staff, to do the follow-up work. And like I said, I was working another job and doing a lot of stuff in the evening as far as follow-up. And that's one of the keys, is you got to be able to follow up. And like I say, the leadership, when COVID hit, I was really worried about what was going to happen in our communities, but our mayors stepped up. They were doing things that some of them did things out of the box that and then start sharing what they were doing. Social media was big during COVID, and that's how they were reaching a lot of their constituents or community leaders, and they all had a plan, and that was unusual for all of them to have a plan.
Absolutely. We had your friend Cedric, who's part of our team now, on a few months ago, and what's remarkable about that episode Frank, is that it's one of the most downloaded episodes of our podcast. And Cedric talked a lot about what the conditions are in eastern Arkansas. But could you just, I mean, for those individuals that have not heard that episode, could you talk about some of the challenges in northeastern Arkansas, especially around the I-40, I-55 corridors going into Tennessee?
Yeah, Cedric grew up over there. Found out he grew up over there in Crawfordsville. But in those communities, with Black mayors taking over leadership, infrastructure changes, not knowing where to get the resources and those kind of things. And then I was talking to somebody, it's probably been 5 or 6 years ago, and they were talking about how much money they put over in the Delta. But
Yes.
when you put money over there, you have to put jobs over there. And that's one of the things that here recently that they've been able to do in Blytheville with the steel companies and Osceola is getting ready to put they have a steel company there, but they're actually getting ready to put another company online. So the workforce is actually changing over there. I think one of the things that we've got to engage in, and we'll talk to Governor Sanders and the congressman over there, is to put housing and things over there, because some of those people drive all the way from Memphis and beyond to even get up to the steel factory. But we got to develop a place for our people here in Arkansas to have housing along that corridor. Flooding and drainage is a big issue, which we just got a major grant on. But that flooding and drainage over there is a major issue. We've got to develop these towns and bring these towns back. Like I say, a lot of these towns have lost their schools, but they're still, and then when you got to develop the community, we've got to do economic development. We've got to develop leaders in those towns. We got the youngest Black mayor over there in that area now, and he's a go-getter. I talked to him.
Jalen Smith, right?
Yeah,
is that who you're talking about? Jalen Smith. He's the youngest Black mayor in America.
Yeah, an American. He's a go-getter.
He's an all-star.
Yeah, and one of the things that he ran on was flooding and drainage, and we just received last year we received a grant from USDA to address flooding and drainage over in that area. Well, the big grant, we already have 19 projects on, but we had a grant we could go back out there in some of the towns that were missed or were left out or didn't get in on it. We've been able to do that. So, we've got to develop leaders like Jalen. He's in and he's fireballing. He's getting some good information. He actually came to our 50th gala anniversary and Cedric was there, and we had a piece on the past. We had some mayors from the past. We had the present mayors, and then I did a little piece on the future as becoming the first executive director. And when I thought about the future, and I didn't have a big major speech ready for him and everything, and I had met Jalen out in the hall, and we talked a little bit, and he didn't even tell me at that time he did say he was going to run for mayor of Earl. And so when I went back in and got the microphone, I said, we talk about the future. I said, this young man is the future, not knowing that he was going to actually run and win. I should have bought a lottery ticket that day, but he did it, and he's passionate about Earl. He ran on flooding and drainage. He's one. We just had a meeting down there 2 weeks ago. He's one of the first mayors that turned around and sent us pictures, because we kind of start the ball on it by you show us pictures. We're going to help you put this application together. So, he's already working on, some of the things. So some of those things over there needs to continue to happen. Some of it don't have stores. Like I say, one of the main things is water, and the water and sewer infrastructure has been a major problem along that line for years. And when I was working with Communities Unlimited, when I went in to work with Communities Unlimited, when I was working for the senator, if I had a problem with water or sewer, I would just give it to a guy that was handling that for the senator in our office. So I never did really think about it. I had never went to one of those wastewater plants in big town or the little towns. So that was a different experience for me. But I see that, I mean, that infrastructure, if you don't have good clean water, it's hard to develop your community. And I realize that now.
So let's explore this a bit. You mentioned this large USDA grant that the Black Mayors Association has won, and you were a big part of this, Frank. That could you just talk about this large grant and your work with the various mayors to increase the long-term prosperity of Arkansas and their municipalities?
Yes, with the grant is with the USDA through NRCS, and we had a young man that brought us the concept. The program is a PL 566 program, watershed program. We didn't know anything about it. He said it's been around for 70 years or so, and the mayors they're not that. I'm not gonna say not that trusting, but they want to fill a lot of things out pretty quickly. So he brought that in 2019, 2020, and the mayors just didn't bite on it. And there was no follow up on his end or our end. So it came back again, and we had one of the towns that was having some flooding issues. So we said, well, let's call this guy, and we called him, and it's 2022. And the Biden administration has this IIJ money. Infrastructure was a big piece of it. Chief Cosby was instrumental in helping us. But we put the application together with the state office, and when you put those applications together, you just kind of hope and pray that that things can happen, and it did happen. I think it was 100 and we submitted like $150 million worth of our projects, but they scaled it down and they said we can't give y'all all the money, so they gave us 94 million for 19 projects, and they have this program. You have to go through a preliminary investigation, so they do the preliminary investigation, and then they do spend a lot of time doing the planning, actually going into the communities, looking at the infrastructure, spending time with the people. We actually, in putting the application together, we actually had pictures. We had them give us pictures of their flooding in those communities. Pictures, videos, newspaper articles, all that kind of stuff was a part of the application.
Right.
And so 5 of them actually have what we call the 4 phases. So they do the preliminary investigation, the planning, the design, and then construction. So we have 5 of those, and that total was actually 83 million. And then the other ones will be just in the planning phase, and then we'll come back in and try to see if there's any money for design and construction. But it's actually an opportunity to help build the Black mayors' capacity and actually help us go into those communities and address flooding and the flooding and drainage issues that they may have.
This is so unique. We work with hundreds of states, municipalities, these various organizations, and for an association of municipalities to come together and agree this is the priorities for these 19 projects, Frank, that is so remarkable. And how did you get these 60 mayors on board with this really needs to be the 19 projects and prioritizing these various projects?
Well, Sean, really, truly, what we did was we just threw the net out there and see which one was going to respond. And we did have some good response, but we also had to do some nudging. And even when we did the nudging, we was up against a very, very tight deadline. And so we nudged to get those 19. And like I said, we were able to go back out later on and get a grant to kind of get some of the other ones. Everybody is not going to believe at the same time. That's just reality. You know, you tell them we're gonna come in here and fix your flooding problem. So we that's what we did. We put the application together, and it was just a hope and a prayer. Like I say, we did 19. We was up against I think that deadline was maybe 21 days. And we called the mayors, and especially the areas that we knew there was some flooding and drainage issues, we would call and say, "Hey, you need to get this in. Get this in to us." And I mean, that's kind of like any grant we have. We kind of put it out there. We put the information out there, and Kevin and I were able to get this one done. Now that we actually got, Kevin is still on his own staff, and then we got an administrative assistant, but we are getting a lot more response from the mayors because we've done something like this. Before that, when COVID hit, there was some money out there to feed and help pay for utilities. And like I say, but a lot of our communities, which I need to get a good count of that, but many of those communities, especially over east, still have their towns still run the water and sewer up for the time. And they still try to make money off of it. So we knew that was one of the areas, well, I guess one of the main areas was utility wise. It would follow the electric bill, and they were paying the electric bill, but wasn't paying the water bill. We could pay the water bill for the city later, and they were being put on the back burner. So that was one of the areas that we focused on, was get the water utilities paid, and then also was able to get them some food in their community.
You mentioned IIJA, and one of our objectives in working with the Black Mayors Association is to capture some additional infrastructure funding for these various Arkansas municipalities. We have identified $4 billion of infrastructure funding, much of which will be coming out of the Department of Transportation and the U.S. Department of Energy, and hope to capture that money and, as I said earlier, create long-term economic impact for these municipalities. But I mean, this is such a great start, and there are very few communities that would agree to come together on a major project like this. Let's talk about northeastern Arkansas for a minute, especially this, like I said before, the I-55, the I-40 corridor. And people that aren't familiar with this area, I don't think they have an understanding of how rural this area is, some of the social challenges. And what I was surprised by is that so much of the workforce of Memphis comes over the Mississippi every day. I mean, you talk about some of the challenges and how the Black Mayors Association has this vision to improve these communities through workforce development and infrastructure.
Yes, over in that area, like I say, that's what really now that's where the jobs are. But You got to develop the workforce. Get people. I talked to the mayor from which he's right there at the split I-55 and I-40. The mayor from West Memphis, right. And we talk about the workforce. He said people have to be trained. We have to be more. Mayor Marco McClendon of West Memphis, man, he said we have to start a lot earlier as far as the training, for different jobs or any kind of jobs. Back when we were growing up, there was a summer program. In those rural areas, there may not be a summer program. You live in Earl or Turl or Gilmore, Murray-Song, some of those small towns like that. To get a summer job, you have to come all the way 20, 25, 30 miles to West Memphis. Yeah. So how are we going to be able to train them? When I grew up in the projects of Fort Smith, but there was a training. We had to be there on time. We have a monster that even when some of the summer programs or even at McDonald's, you see the young people wanting to answer their cell phones while they're trying to deal with passing a cheeseburger through the window. Those kind of things we have to start training the workforce, I believe, a lot earlier. 12, 13, you can't maybe not be able to give them resources or money at that time, but you got to get them in that mindset, of what are you going to do for the future?
Right.
If you know that it's the steel mill up there, I mean, the new, I can't even remember the factors they're putting in Osceola, but they say they're going to be starting those jobs at $80,000.
That's right.
So if you're starting those jobs at $80,000, you don't want your house, you don't want your house to be, a $25,000 or $30,000 house. You don't want to live in a housing unit and stuff like that. So that's one of the areas that we're really going to be focusing on. And we've done a survey back in 2019, and I've had a lot of mayors nudging me down on is we've got to have housing. A lot of, like you say, some of the people that work in I actually had a church member of mine move to where his job moved him to Marion, Arkansas, which is right there on 55. But he actually lives over in Memphis. He said, Frank, there was just no housing over here, not even in Marion, so which is a growing town. But so that way all the way up, and a lot of people don't want to, I wouldn't want to drive from Memphis to Blytheville every day, which is 55, 60 miles. So that means I've got to get up and go. I've got to get up and leave an hour and a half early to get to work on time. So people are looking for housing in Blytheville, in Osceola, in some of those other towns around there, Turl. They did a great development not too long ago in Sunset. A lot of farmland right over there where they were doing a lot of cotton and soybeans and things like that. Still a lot of farmland over there. I talked to Mayor of Turl, which is right off 55 the other day, and that's what he's talking about. He said, I've got 140 acres. He said, it needs to be developed. He said, and we can put some housing here. He said he's heard that, some of the other small towns are looking at that. And that is going to be one of the saving graces over in that area is to put some good, affordable, they don't want cheap housing. The mayor from Blytheville told me, he said, Frank, it can't be cheap housing because if you're making, if a person's making $80,000, $90,000, they should be able to have a good house.
Absolutely.
And that's what they're going to be looking for. They're not going to be wanting to live into no affordable housing and type that kind of arrangement. They want some real housing. So that is one of the issues that we're going to be that's on the top of our list.
Which I think you're right on target. Most people don't realize, you talked about this traffic over the Mississippi. The bridge is really a bottleneck, I think, for that area. And one of the things that we have prioritized as LSI is to capture the funding necessary to make upgrades to that bridge over the Mississippi, working with both the communities of eastern Arkansas and Memphis. It's critical. So what our vision is in working with the Black Mayors Association is, as I said, we've identified $4 billion of IIJA funding, which has really been the focus of ours over the last 6 months. And part of this IIJA funding is infrastructure, but the other side of it is developing an ecosystem that includes creating jobs in Arkansas, creating all of the various infrastructure and conduits necessary for the placement of these individuals into these high-wage jobs. Some of the projects that we are tapping into include the TANF fund out of Health and Human Services, the WIOA fund out of the Department of Labor, obviously the large IIJA and other funds out of Commerce, Energy, Transportation. And so it's just such an opportunity. I've categorized this as a once in a generation opportunity for some of these municipalities to build jobs and the infrastructure to support these jobs through these funds, and to be working with you and the other executives of the Arkansas Black Mayors Association. It's such a privilege.
Yes, sir. We really appreciate Cedric, introducing us to LSI.
I know you've got a lot of superstars in the association, but could you just maybe talk about some of the amazing politicians that you get to work with on a daily basis? I mean, we mentioned we mentioned a few, Jalen Smith and the new mayor of Arkansas of Little Rock. But I mean, are there some real superstars of the association that are driving this vision? Because it really is a selfless act working with the other municipalities of Arkansas.
Yes, we have those two superstars. Actually, Mayor Scott here in Little Rock, he's the actual president of the National African American Association. They've been around, in one stance or the other for a while. So he's actually the president of that. He is very passionate about Little Rock and brought a lot of jobs and infrastructure and things. Nice. But some of the hidden talent that I would like to expound on would be we have a lot of and I should have the numbers in front of me, Sean. Next time I will. We have a lot of female mayors, Black mayors, and they are very talented. A lot of people listen to them. I actually had Cedric and man, I forgot my guy's name out of Utah. Was it John? They came down with Cedric last week.
Josh Johnson, yeah.
Yeah, Josh. Man, we took him to Alzheimer, which is here in Arkansas, and she's been our treasure. And, when she came in, her town had problems with taxes, back taxes, and maybe $4,000 or $5,000 in the bank. And now their town and paid the taxes off, and she's getting $1 million grants, and she's trying to fix her infrastructure down in south where Eudora. We've got a go-getter who completed someone else's term. Her name is Mayor Butler, and she's doing some great things down there, battling against all odds. She's got some infrastructure problems, but those are some of the ones that are right there in Pine Bluff. Mayor Washington, she's on her third term. And these are all great leaders. So, even in the challenge of the superstardom, we actually had one that would end up losing, but she was great for those 4 years she was there. Was down in El Dorado, did some great things for El Dorado, Mayor Creer. So, I like my male strong power, but we do have more female Black mayors now than males, I believe. I'm gonna get you that exact count.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, but they are some go-getters, and out of West we have Mayor Porter, Brenda Porter, who's doing some good for her little small town of Toilette. Had some infrastructure problems, but they all, they're working with planning districts. They're working with us to provide technical assistance to get some resources to their towns. One of my favorite towns when I was working with Communities Unlimited was Cotton Plant, and I think Cedric's been to Cotton Plant. Cotton Plant lost their school. Then they had, 2 or 3 different mayors. But when I went in there to work with Cotton Plant with CU, the mayor had just became mayor. She was 70. Her bookkeeper was probably a little bit older than 70. Water bookkeeper was a little bit, all of them were kind of seniors. And so, but the mayor had came in and she really didn't know, she had served on the council, but she didn't really know the status of the financials and all that kind of stuff. So we were able to help build that financial infrastructure. But Arkansas passed the medical marijuana tax back in, right when she was coming in office. And so the first medical marijuana, where we grow our marijuana plant, is in Cotton Plant. That was one of the first ones that opened. Now we have, 4 or 5 other places they can actually grow it. That's been a game changer for that town. We have to go in there and spend more time in developing economic development around that. She always, every time I talk to her, she's talking about housing. But, there's some other economic development things that we could help her out on. The nearest big town to her would be Brinkley. It's about 10, 20 miles away from I-40. But that was the first, and medical marijuana here in Arkansas is a big business, $1 million business. Probably getting done probably pretty soon, be close to $1 billion. Although we didn't pass the recreational, the medical is still, they've had to build another facility onto that facility. So, you talk about leadership and superstardom, you got some of those. I put my female mayors up against my mayors. And that you gave me an idea right there. I'm going to end up coming up with a debate here pretty soon.
I don't want to get you in trouble with your members, but
that would be a good challenge. That would be a good fundraiser for me.
I love it. A couple of things as we wrap this up, Frank. What do you love about Arkansas? I mean, this role that you're in is it is amazing, and what you've accomplished in such a short time is amazing. But I mean, ultimately, I assume there's something that you really love about Arkansas. What is that?
Well, I was born and raised here. Well, I was born and raised in Fort Smith, which is north of about 2.5 hours north. And so, I went to school, played basketball in Oklahoma, and then into Texas, but came home to Arkansas and actually started working with a company out of Fort Smith, ABF, and moved down to Little Rock. And just the people, genuine people working and trying to be together. They have passion and love for one another. Some of them want everything to roll their way. And sometimes, that's not the way that you get more things done. If you're cooperative, like those 19 cities or the 50, 55 Black mayors, if you're cooperative and if you show force together, I interviewed for a job after the senator's job, and they were saying, well, Frank, the landscape is changing. Democrats are out, Republicans are in. Who has the power now? And I thought about that, and I probably blew the interview with my long. I gave my long response, Sean, was I still think the people have the power. I said because. And I've been down to our state capitol a lot of times, and I went down there one time, and it was so much pressure put on whatever. I don't remember the bill, but I actually stated this bill in this interview. But the people were all over that capitol, and they had security and stuff, but security would not be able to handle those people and back that bill down. I mean, they had to, they even had Walmart calling in saying, "Hey, y'all, we need to take another look at this thing," which is one of the big companies here in Arkansas, or the biggest company in the world. So that's one of the things I like about it is, there's a lot of give and take. When we get together, we're going to make some great things happen. Black, white, whatever. If we get together and we're going in the same motion, which is hard to do politically. Sometimes you get bogged down with the political piece of it. But one thing that COVID did show us, it can affect everybody. It did not have any, and we had to come together on that. And it shouldn't take something like that, all the lives we lost, to come together like that. So that my vision is to just keep on. We represent the mayors represent a lot of people here in this state. We try to get them engaged, try to keep people focused on doing things together, working together to make Arkansas better.
Love it. One of the things that I'd love to see the Arkansas Black Mayors Association work as part of its objective is to position a congressional representative. Arkansas is one of the states that have never had a Black member of Congress, and you've got some amazing individuals that could be candidates to run for the U.S. Congress. I'd love to see that happen. Yeah. One of the things that I know about you is that you're a huge sports fan, and specifically basketball. You love basketball. Talk about how basketball has impacted your life, and who do you follow? What are some of the basketball teams that you love?
Well, yeah, I played, some high school basketball, and really was a late developer. End up getting a scholar. End up starting my senior year. Wasn't doing too much my 10th and 11th grade year, but started my senior year. Got a scholarship. Went to Connor State College over in Oklahoma for 2 years. Then went to a HBCU down in, actually at that time it was in Waco for 2 years. And played some decent basketball. At Connors, it was more or less playing defense. We had somebody who could score. I could always score, Sean. Uh, but,
Just like
but
now. Just
yeah,
like now, you deliver.
yeah. But I was talking to somebody the other day about basketball. I said, you have to be able to do what the team needs. And so when I went to, I played good defense there. I got defensive player of the year for 2 years at Connor State. I still got those plaques. So when I go down to Waco, we really didn't have a score. They had a score that had left. And so I was shooting the ball a lot better. So a lot of them was saying, well, this guy can't play defense. He's doing all the scoring. He don't have time for defense. So I told him, I told him one game, Sean, I said, I don't have to score. I said, I'm going to just show you. I'm going to play defense, get these rebounds. And so we did that. The game got too close. The coach got mad at me at halftime. I hadn't scored any points. And then I came out the second half, and I did not pass the ball. I scored, ended up with about 22 points, made all tournament team. We was at a tournament. But you have to have the balance. You got to have a score. You got to play defense when you have to. And then the bottom line is I like to win. So I follow the teams I follow as far as basketball is I follow the Razorbacks. And then as far as the pro team, Memphis Grizzlies is close. I used to go some games pre-COVID. Just didn't really happen. A long time ago, I used to like the Lakers when they were with Magic. I didn't really follow them a lot and really appreciate what Kobe did, really and truly. But, it's amazing the things that Kobe did. I'm a big Shaq fan, but that as far as pro ball. And then this is March Madness. It's my time of year. I don't know how much work they're going to get done out of me. That's been every year, Sean. The senator, I guess my statute of limitations is up, but, I spent a lot of days doing March Madness, and we actually had some all that kind of good shit. And then Senator knew that too. He knew that. He knew I was a big basketball fan, and the Senator, he's a big basketball. He's a big basketball fan, and we all have some love for Arkansas. Thought they'd be a lot better this year. They're struggling. They're young, but I still have love for the game. I actually wanted to coach it. My wife didn't want me to coach it. I don't know if I would have been a good coach anyway, but I still have love for the game and still talk to some of my people that I work with Senator Pryor about. We always still talk basketball, and they always say, when the interns came in, you don't tell them none of the basketball stories and don't be bringing your articles and all that kind of stuff. But I still love the game. We used to go on the field trips on the Senator. We go what we call a mobile office and visit communities. And, every once in a while when they had a gym, I'd have to grab that basketball and shoot it. And then I told one guy, I called one of my guys that I played with in college, and I told him, I said, man, I did not know my jump shot was so pretty. And he got a kick out of that. But and even in that, Sean, it's just a relationship. I have a coach that coached me in Waco, at Paul Quinn, and he's the athletic director now. And he, we still have a group of I think it's like 20. And he sends a message out, a Christian message out every morning. Just like clockwork. And so he's still coaching and teaching us, and that's one of the things about basketball and sports is you always build those relationships that last for a lifetime.
That's exactly right. Well, I love what you're doing, Frank, and I am so excited that we're working with the Arkansas Black Mayors Association to really change. It's transformational work in these various communities. I am so impressed with what you've done in such a short period of time. We're just honored to be working with this fantastic organization, 50 years of creating leadership and economic prosperity in Arkansas. And thanks for the time. I have loved
So I
it. This
appreciate
is
it. And I think,
so fun.
the thing that we're going to do together with LSI is going to be, I told him, I said, I've got another ace in the hole that y'all don't even know about. Which a couple of them know about it now because we did when Macklin and them came and Josh came the last time. We were able to go into a couple of the communities. But like I told them, I said, what you see in these communities, you can kind of model it to all the communities here in Arkansas.
Right. Thank you so much, Frank. I love what you're doing. And when I come to Little Rock, I'm going to play some one-on-one with you. I want to see that jump shot.
That's the only thing that's left, Sean. Ain't no defense, ain't no running. I think I still got the jump shot though. But I'm gonna try to be up in DC in April.
Okay, great. Love to see you there as well. Frank,
Yes,
love what you're doing. Thank you so much for carving out this time, and we're excited about this and your member organization. You're right. There are a lot of all-stars in this group of Black mayors of Arkansas, and we are looking forward to working with these communities.
All right. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.